Hello, this is Bishop Joensen of the Diocese of Des Moines, Iowa. Once again, we're coming to you from St. Anne Chapel in the Cathedral of St. Ambrose in Des Moines. Father John Bertogli and myself are preparing to celebrate the Mass here for the fifth Sunday of Lent. We'd like to share with you my thoughts on today's reading, particularly the Gospel, the raising of Lazarus in John chapter 11. I encourage you to read that reading on your own and then perhaps to have this as part of your reflection throughout these days of this week and to come back to it with so much that is swirling around us in our society. We know that the death of a family member can expose old wounds and raw feelings. It can actually drive siblings apart. Yet for all their differences in temperament and personality, the death of their brother Lazarus draws Martha and Mary closer together. They converge not only in their common grief and their recognition that if Jesus had been present, things would have been different. Lazarus would not have died. Yet the love of family and the deep friendship with Jesus, which has drawn them to be by their side, stirs their awareness and their faith that still Jesus is capable of doing something, not just someday off in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus is capable of transforming the last day into today, a day when death is seen and felt for all it is and is not. Death is not the last word. Jesus is the first and only word uttered by the Father, and he is the person and portal by which death yields to life. Love draws Jesus to the brink of death so that we might choose to live love with him. We've all been doing our best to practice social, that is, physical distancing. And like many of you, I felt the need to escape the narrow confines that life in the specter of the coronavirus has imposed upon us. So I went for a long walk yesterday here in Des Moines in Graceland Cemetery in the adjoining Waveland Golf Course. And given the dismal state of my golf game, which I no longer play, I don't know which was more unsettling, to be in the cemetery or on the golf course. But amidst the memento mori, the reminder of death represented by those who've gone before us, I came across this marker in the Jewish section of the cemetery paying tribute to the Jewish soldiers who served in World War II and made the ultimate sacrifice. The inscription read, "The beloved and the dear in their lives are not divided." The beloved and the dear in their lives are not divided. What a testimony to that Jewish intuition that the bond of love that unites us is not torn asunder by death. That the prophetic promise of Ezekiel, our first reading on this fifth Sunday from chapter 37, "I will open your graves and have you rise from them. I will put my spirit in you that you may live," that promise is true and trustworthy. And so in the face of death, a prophetic people rise up and define themselves by what matters most in life. Martha and Mary evoke Jesus' special presence because of the great love and sacrifice that define them. They are both unmarried women, and it's not too much of a stretch to believe that their state in life reflects their choice to remain and maintain a household where their brother Lazarus will be cared for. For the word that is used to describe him suggests someone who is sickly or weak, insignificant, perhaps disabled even. And that's in the love that they bear for him, they've already chosen to die to themselves for their brother. And so in the face of the disorientation and distress that would otherwise submerge them, they experience a kind of spiritual death, a positive form of death in the act of faith that they place in Jesus. They put to rest any fear or doubts that the stone has been set on their family story. "I have come to believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one coming into the world." Jesus, for his sake, does not skirt or gloss over death. This wrenching reality of his beloved Lazarus' death is not something that he massages. He feels it in the depths of his being. He shudders and weeps, unselfconsciously letting death unmask just how human he is. Death experienced and anticipated has a way of doing that to us, doesn't it? It certainly is the experience of many in Ankeny and central Iowa these past days in the wake of the death of 14-year-old Colton, a beautifully talented and lively young man with so much promise ahead, who for whatever reason felt that the burden of living was greater than the weight of death. How many tears have been shed because of Colton's death by family and classmates? How many tears have been shed, yes, by Jesus himself? It doesn't matter if death strikes one in his teens or in their 80s or 90s. Death can overwhelm our senses, our precious composure, our felt control. When we seek life in ourselves, we know that we can't sustain it forever. One of the attending symptoms of COVID-19, I'm told, is that persons may lose the ability to smell or taste, a kind of dulling caused by the disease. Jesus, when told that there will be a stench, doesn't back away. He goes there. He knows what he is entering into. If he prays to his Father to raise his friend, then he himself will be called to trust radically and completely in delivering over his own spirit to his Father. If he commands that Lazarus' tombstone be taken away, he is sealing his own destiny for those who will be so antagonized by his unswerving devotion to communicate life. They will not rest until they roll the stone in front of the cave where Jesus' body will be placed. This is our great and glorious hope. Our hope is found in Jesus experiencing death for what it is, and he still chooses to go there. Lazarus, restored to life and unbound from death, means for Jesus there is no going back. He is bound to fulfill the mission entrusted to him for our sake. In the extraordinary prayer service led by our Holy Father Pope Francis this past Friday for worldwide deliverance from the coronavirus pandemic, he roused us to recognize that this is not a time when God has pronounced judgment on the world, but a time where each of us on earth, each of us in this diocese and in our homes, is called to make a judgment, a choice, to live for love's sake, for what is most necessary to be neighbor and friend and family to one another. We are to set aside sibling rivalry or ill will that breeds its own stench in our relationships. We're to be courageous and creative in the way that so many are in these serious sacred days. So many are doing so much on the front lines. So many are working and praying in hidden, unremarkable ways, steadfast in their fidelity and trust in God. The beloved and the dear in their lives are not divided. Hope affirms the unity and connectedness of all that we encounter in each other, and yes, even in death, death which Jesus exchanges for his own. Love draws Jesus to the brink of death so that we might choose to live love with him. Thank you for your listening. May we keep each other in heart and prayer throughout these days.